Okay, we have to start today with what is arguably the most dangerous development in Northeast Asia in, well, decades. We're talking about the potential neutralization of a major U.S. ally.
South Korea. They're facing a truly existential security threat right now.
And it stems directly from this new treaty, right?
That's right. The Treaty on Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, signed by Russia and North Korea, the DPRK, back in June 2024. And for Seoul, the deepest fear isn't just about sanctions being busted.
No.
It's the confirmed potential, maybe even the likelihood, of Russia transferring truly advanced military technology.
And specifically?
We're talking about two huge force multipliers here. First, the tech needed to help North Korean ICBM warheads actually survive re-entry through the atmosphere. That's critical.
Okay.
And second, capabilities for nuclear-powered submarines. Game changers.
If Pyongyang gets those capabilities, that just completely rewrites the strategic rule book in the region.
It absolutely does. They would drastically erode, maybe even, neutralize South Korea's the ROK's long-held conventional military advantage.
And it hits the U.S. guarantee, too.
Critically undermines the credibility of the U.S. security guarantee. America's promise to defend South Korea. That's the terrifying new reality we're dealing with now.
Welcome to NationScope Podcast. Join Jordan and Jamie as they dive into the latest headlines, breaking stories, and critical events shaping America and the world. From politics to culture, from the economy to technology, we analyze the news that matters most. And today, we are doing a deep dive into exactly that. The rebirth of this Cold War-style quasi-alliance between Russia and the DPRK, and the, frankly, profound security crisis it's creating for South Korea.
Yeah, and it's important to stress this isn't just some transactional arms deal anymore. It's become a direct ideological and strategic challenge to the U.S.-led order in Asia.
So what are we going to cover?
Well, we're going to really unpack the pact's most dangerous clauses. We'll look closely at Russia's direct, almost coercive warnings to Seoul. And we'll also get into the really tough domestic political constraints that are shaping South Korea's response options. It's a very difficult position.
Okay, let's unpack this, right? Let's start with how this relationship even got here. It seems like it shifted gears incredibly fast.
It did. Sources confirm that, starting late 2022, it was really just a pragmatic, transactional thing.
Driven by Ukraine.
Exactly. Russia desperately needed munitions for the war in Ukraine, and North Korea had stockpiles.
And how much are we talking about? The numbers I've seen are just huge.
They are staggering. The estimates vary, but North Korea seems to have shipped somewhere between 5 million, maybe even up to or over 12 million artillery rounds, plus, scores of short-range ballistic missiles to Russia.
Wow. And the value?
The estimated total value of just the military support could be as high as $9.8 billion. It's a massive amount.
And that was enough to keep Russia going.
That flow of material was absolutely critical for sustaining Russia's front lines, especially during some key periods in the conflict.
Okay, so that volume obviously made Russia take notice. But this treaty in June 2024, it formalized something much, much deeper than just battlefield convenience, right? What's the ideology behind it?
Right. The pact, it goes way beyond just military stuff. It covers trade, investment, science, technology, cooperation. The works. And crucially, both Putin and Kim Jong-un explicitly framed this alliance as part of a shared long-term strategic vision. Their words, to establish a new multipolar world.
Which is code for?
Code for explicitly countering U.S. hegemony. They see themselves, or at least portray themselves, as a coalition against a common adversary, not just a temporary deal.
And the absolute core of this, the part that has every defense ministry buzzing, is that mutual defense clause, Article 4.
That's the one.
The language is really stark. If either country is put in a state of war by an armed invasion, the other shall provide military and other assistance with all means in its possession without delay. That sounds exactly like the old Soviet-era commitment, like automatic entry into a war.
It certainly sounds that way on the surface. It absolutely gives the appearance of restoring the 1961 Soviet DPRK Mutual Defense Pact.
There's always a but with these things, isn't there?
There is, and it raises this huge question, what does this promise really mean if things actually heat up? Because there is a critical difference in the 2024 text.
Okay, what is it?
They added a phrase, a kind of legalistic escape clause. It says, assistance must be provided in accordance with Article 51 of the UN Charter and the laws of the DPRK and the Russian Federation.
And the laws of. So
Yeah.
their own domestic laws.
Precisely. That reference to their respective domestic laws is the key.
Yeah.
It injects massive strategic ambiguity into the commitment.
So Moscow can basically decide how much or how little to get involved based on its own internal politics or strategic needs at the moment. It keeps their options open.
Exactly. It preserves Russia's strategic autonomy. It forces South Korea and the U.S. to plan for the absolute worst-case scenario, full Russian intervention,
Right.
while simultaneously giving Putin a legal out to just send token support or maybe even walk away if jumping into a Korean conflict doesn't suit Moscow's interests at that specific time.
It's like maximum deterrence effect with minimum binding commitment. High-stakes political theater with a legal footnote.
That's a good way to put it. Maximizes the threat for Pyongyang, minimizes Moscow's actual legal obligation to, say, sacrifice Russian soldiers. It keeps their adversaries guessing and forces them to assume the worst.
Okay, so beyond that strategic pledge, what's Russia actually giving North Korea in return for those, billions in munitions? We know about food, fuel, maybe cash.
Yeah, the basics are there. Economic and humanitarian aid, definitely food and fuel. Financial compensation estimated at around $20 million a month just for the North Korean troops deployed in Russia.
Okay.
And, crucially, diplomatic cover, using its UN Security Council veto to shield Pyongyang from sanctions enforcement. That's huge.
It goes beyond that now into actual hardware.
Yes, and this is where we move from just sort of transactional support into actual strategic enablement. We have confirmed transfers of advanced air defense missile systems, potentially even the advanced S-400s.
Wow. Okay.
But the thing causing extreme alarm, really, is Article 10 of the treaty.
What does that cover?
It talks about cooperation in space and peaceful nuclear energy. Now, given that North Korea's military missile program and its supposed space program are, they're essentially the same thing.
The technology's dual-use satellite launchers are basically ICBMs.
Exactly. So this article provides a kind of veneer of legitimacy, cover story, for Russia to assist the DPRK's sanctioned weapons of mass destruction programs, including their ICBM development.
So Moscow can claim it's just helping with peaceful space exploration or nuclear energy, while everyone knows that technology is going straight into Kim's missile and nuclear programs.
That seems to be the mechanism, and a nod and a wink using Article 10.
Okay, let's really dive into those specific threats, the things that are keeping defense planners in Seoul awake at night. You mentioned South Korea's strategy relies on a qualitative edge.
Absolutely. For decades, the ROK military's plan has been based on having technologically superior weapons to counter the North's much larger, but generally more archaic military forces.
So if Russia provides cutting-edge tech,
it potentially eliminates that qualitative edge instantly. Yeah. And Russia can provide specific force multipliers that North Korea has demonstrably struggled and failed to perfect on its own for years.
So if you're in Seoul's defense ministry, what are the top worries?
Well, I'd say you're laser-focused on three main vulnerabilities.
Okay, number one, you mentioned ICBM credibility, the re-entry vehicle tech. Why is that specific bit so hard?
It's just brutal physics. When a warhead comes screaming back into the atmosphere from space, it faces incredible heat, friction, enormous G-forces.
Right.
Without a really sophisticated, properly engineered reentry vehicle, the warhead just burns up or gets destroyed. It makes a whole multi-million-dollar missile useless, like a glorified firework. Russian expertise here, if transferred, could essentially guarantee that North Korean warheads can survive that reentry. That suddenly transforms the DPRK's ICBMs from a maybe threat into a credible strategic strike capability against the continental U.S.
And that fundamentally shakes the U.S. commitment to South Korea.
It completely undermines the U.S. extended deterrence guarantee. It forces any U.S. president into an impossible choice. Defend Seoul and risk a nuclear attack on, say, Los Angeles, or hesitate and abandon an ally. That capability alone changes everything.
Okay. Threat number two, nuclear-powered submarines.
Right. This provides what's called a second strike capability. A nuclear-powered submarine, or SSN, offers incredible stealth and endurance. It can stay hidden underwater for months. Diesel subs just can't do that.
So they can hide and wait.
Exactly. It gives Pyongyang a survivable launch platform.
Yeah.
So even if South Korea or the U.S. were to launch a preemptive strike, maybe take out leadership or known missile sites, the North could still have a hidden submarine out there, ready to launch nuclear retaliation. It fundamentally changes the nuclear deterrence game on the peninsula. It creates stability, if you can call it that, only through mutual vulnerability. Mutual assured destruction, essentially.
Grim. Okay, and the third force multiplier, targeting.
Enhanced targeting, yeah. specifically through military reconnaissance satellites. We're talking about advanced ISR capabilities, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance.
What does that allow them to do?
It allows North Korea to get much better, maybe even real-time, precise imagery and targeting data. They could pinpoint ROK infrastructure, troop movements, critical command and control centers much more effectively.
Their current systems aren't great.
They're rudimentary, relatively speaking. Russian assistance here could make their targeting far more accurate and therefore far more devastating in any conflict.
And layered on top of all this tech transfer risk, there's the human element too, right? Those North Korean troops in Russia.
Yes, that's a really important, often overlooked factor. There are estimates of 15,000, maybe more, North Korean combat and construction troops deployed to occupied areas of Ukraine or working in Russia.
And they're learning.
They are gaining invaluable, direct, hard-won experience of modern high-intensity warfare. Think about drones, electronic warfare, sophisticated combined arms operations, things they couldn't learn in exercises back home.
And they'll bring that knowledge back.
They will absolutely integrate that knowledge and experience into the Korean People's Army doctrine and training when they return. That's an operational upgrade that you just can't buy. It's earned.
Wow. Okay, turn into the political side. The damage there seems just as bad.
It's severe. Back in March 2024, Russia used its UN Security Council veto to kill the annual renewal of the UN Panel of Experts mandate on North Korea sanctions.
And that panel was the main watchdog.
It was the primary international body responsible for monitoring and reporting on North Korean sanctions violations. Its reports were crucial for tracking the DPRK's illicit programs.
So, effectively, Russia just blinded the international community. The world lost its main eyes and ears on North Korea's sanctions-busting activities.
Pretty much. It essentially gives Pyongyang diplomatic impunity to just continue its weapons programs without that direct international scrutiny and documentation.
Okay. So all of this leads to South Korea's response. What can they actually do? You mentioned leverage.
They do have significant leverage. South Korea possesses massive stockpiles of highly effective conventional weapons, particularly artillery ammunition, stuff that Ukraine desperately needs.
Right.
So theoretically, they could counter-pressure Russia by helping Ukraine, but, there's a huge but, they face this crippling domestic constraint.
Public opinion back home.
Exactly. There is clear, overwhelming public opposition in South Korea to providing lethal military aid directly to Ukraine. A recent poll put it at something like 74.2% opposed.
That's a huge majority. So sending weapons to Kyiv is politically talk trick for the government in Seoul.
Extremely toxic. They have the capability. The shells are sitting there, but they don't really have the political freedom or mandate from their own people to use that leverage directly.
And Russia knows this.
Oh, absolutely. This domestic paralysis is exactly what Russia is ruthlessly exploiting. Their strategy is pure coercive diplomacy.
Putin's warning.
Putin didn't mince words at all. He explicitly warned South Korea that providing lethal aid to Ukraine would be a very big mistake. His words. And he threatened that such a move would trigger Russian decisions that would fully destroy relations between our countries.
And the unspoken threat behind that is?
The implicit threat is clearly that Russia would retaliate by accelerating those dangerous strategic technology transfers to Pyongyang if Seoul crosses that red line on lethal aid. Moscow is basically strong-arming Seoul into treating Ukraine as somebody else's problem, far away.
So how are the other big players in the region reacting to this renewed access? The U.S. and Japan seem pretty unified.
They are. The U.S. and Japan have responded quickly by reinforcing their trilateral security framework with South Korea. They've accelerated joint military exercises, like the big Freedom Edge drills.
And reaffirming commitments.
And lots of public statements reaffirming their ironclad extended deterrence commitments to both Seoul and Tokyo. They clearly see this Russia-DPRK alignment as a shared threat that requires a united front.
But China's position seems much trickier.
Oh, the China dilemma is incredibly nuanced and complex. On one hand, Beijing broadly shares Russia's anti-U.S. sentiment. They also view the U.S.-led alliance system in Asia as inherently hostile to their interests. So they're not exactly shedding tears over the U.S. facing new challenges.
But they can't be thrilled about Kim getting closer to Putin.
No, they are deeply anxious on really two main fronts. First, they absolutely fear losing their decades-long, almost exclusive leverage over Pyongyang. China values its role as North Korea's main benefactor and sort of controller, primarily to manage stability right on its border. A Russia-DPRK axis dilutes that influence significantly.
Okay. And the second anxiety?
Second, this Russia-DPRK pact provides the absolute perfect justification, the perfect excuse for the U.S., South Korea, and Japan to deepen and institutionalize their trilateral security cooperation,
which China hates.
which Beijing views as direct strategic encirclement aimed at containing China itself. So they're caught.
So China's kind of happy to see the U.S. get poked in the eye, but terrified that the whole situation might just supercharge the anti-China alliance right on its doorstep.
That tension really dictates their response, which has mostly been public evasion.
Mm.
They won't condemn the pact openly. But President Xi Jinping did issue a very clear warning recently, stating that China does not allow conflict and turmoil to happen on the Korean Peninsula.
And who is that message for?
That's a line drawn not just for the U.S. and its allies, but almost certainly for North Korea, too. It's basically Beijing telling Pyongyang, don't get reckless, don't start something that destabilizes the whole region because we won't tolerate it.
Okay, so this really unstable regional picture leads us to South Korea's actual strategy. How are they trying to manage this crisis? You mentioned a framework.
Yes, they've developed what seems to be a conditions-based, phased response framework. The primary goal appears to be surgical deterrence.
Meaning?
Meaning they want to deter Russia from transferring the most dangerous technologies to North Korea without triggering some kind of uncontrollable military or diplomatic escalation. It's a very fine line to walk.
And how do they plan to do that?
The key seems to be clearly linking any South Korean countermeasures directly to specific Russian actions. They've outlined different phases of response.
Okay, so what's phase one? Where are we now?
Phase one seems to be the current operating mode. It involves South Korea providing what they call enhanced non-lethal and indirect defensive support for Ukraine.
What does that include?
Things like high-value dual-use equipment, think mine-clearing gear, maybe advanced medical supplies, communications equipment. It would also include allowing indirect sales of defensive weapons.
How does indirect work?
For example, allowing South Korean companies to sell artillery shells or other defensive systems to a third country, like Poland or Romania, knowing full well that country will then transfer them on to Kyiv.
Ah, okay. So they are helping Ukraine, but carefully staying within the bounds of that domestic opposition to direct lethal aid.
Exactly. Supporting Ukraine significantly, but without crossing that political red line at home.
Okay. So what would trigger a move beyond phase one? What's the ultimate red line for Seoul?
That would be phase three. Phase three is the big one. The trigger for activating phase three is the confirmed transfer of what they term strategic WMD-enabling technology to North Korea.
And that means?
That specifically means the things we talked about earlier, the ICBM reentry vehicle technology or the nuclear submarine propulsion technology, those core existential threats.
If Russia gives Kim those.
If Moscow is confirmed to have crossed that specific technological line, then the ROK government has stated it will initiate the consideration of direct lethal aid to Ukraine.
So then they would potentially start sending shells and weapons directly.
That's the implication. It's Seoul's biggest leverage point, their ultimate counter threat. It's designed to deter Moscow by threatening a really material, potentially game-changing shift in Ukraine's favor on the battlefield if Russia pushes too far in enabling North Korea's strategic weapons. #MatchHeadOutro.
So just to summarize the incredibly high stakes for you listening, this Moscow-Pyongyang axis hasn't just tweaked things, it has fundamentally altered the security landscape in Northeast Asia. It's created a dangerous new era of, well, managed chronic instability.
Yeah, and South Korea is caught in this incredibly delicate balancing act, trying to deter Russia, reassure its own public, work with allies, all while navigating these intense domestic political pressures against any move that looks like it might drag them closer to the war in Europe. It's a strategic tightrope walk.
And a final thought to leave you with.
Well, thinking about that treaty again, Article 4, that reliance on domestic laws to justify military help, it gives Moscow just immense strategic flexibility, right?
Yeah, that escape clause.
Exactly. So if this whole partnership at its core is really about Russia using North Korea as a kind of asymmetric proxy, a tool to pressure the U.S. and its allies, we have to ask, how much actual power or agency does Pyongyang truly gain from this? They get vital support, technology, legitimacy, sure. But they also know deep down that Russia holds the ultimate legal out if a real conflict erupts. North Korea remains fundamentally dependent on Russia acting in Russia's own self-interest. It makes them perhaps a more dangerous dependency rather than a truly empowered independent partner. Something to think about.
You've been listening to NationScope Podcast, where Jordan and Jamie analyze the stories shaping America and the world. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.